Absolutely. Being able to analyze data, right? Assess student outcomes. And this is interesting. One of the areas in which I do a lot of work is in teacher-made assessments. But you know, for those of you who went through an initial teacher preparation program, did you have a course on how to do that? Did you have a course on how to do that? I didn't. I didn't at all. And that's one of the areas that we see lacking in terms of preparation. Okay? This table right here, what was something you had on your list?
Having a love for teaching and learning.
Okay, having a love for teaching and learning. How many of you had something like enthusiasm? I heard at the back table back here, you got to know your content, right? You can have all the love and care for kids that you want to have, but if you don't know math, you shouldn't be teaching math, okay? And there are studies that show at the high school level that kids who have teachers who have a major in math, they perform better than kids who have teachers who don't. I mean, that's, makes a lot of sense. They needed a study to show us that, but there is some concrete proof or support that you got to have a major in that particular subject. You got to know your content in order to teach it. Well, this is a framework, and this is on your next page. This is a framework for thinking about what are the qualities of effective teachers. And any evaluation system should be based on what we know makes an effective teacher. Am I right? If we are going to have a fair, balanced evaluation system, one that gives teachers the information that they need in order to grow in their profession, it needs to be based on what we know, what the research says makes an effective teacher. Does that make sense to you? That there should be a research base behind the standards that are in an evaluation system. Okay? And so this is a framework to think about effective teaching. For background, this is a prerequisites. That's where we take a look at things like, do I have a major in math if I'm teaching math? Do I know the content? As the person, am I caring? These over here, job responsibilities and practices, these make up the bulk of what it is that a teacher does in the classroom with their students, okay? So these make up the bulk of that, all right? So the prerequisites of effective teachers. Now, which teacher factor is a strong predictor of student achievement gains? Which of these is a strong predictor of student achievement gains? How many of you think experience is a strong predictor? Okay. How many of you think level of education, if a teacher has a master's, bachelor's, is a strong predictor? Okay. Type of teacher certification, whether it's, went through a initial regular teacher preparation program, alternative, strong predictor. Okay, it can't be at the beginning, but those differences disappear after a while. Okay? In fact, none of them are strong predictors of student achievement. In fact, they've looked at, and how do we pay teachers now? Is it based on, when I was teaching, it was on salary step increases, right? If I was there so many years, I got more money. If I got my master's, I got more money, right? And so that's how my compensation was, right? So it was based on some of those things that really don't have a strong predictor of student achievement, okay? And so we have to wonder, what is it that we should be evaluating ourselves based on? It's more than just being there for so many years. It's how effective are we those years that we're there in that classroom. The background characteristics really make up only 3% when we think of the influence that teachers can have on student achievement. So that's a very small piece of the pie. But we know, and we know that ESEA is being reauthorized now, right? No Child Left Behind. Does anybody need some information on that? Okay, no. All right, if it was 10 years ago, maybe so, right? So No Child Left Behind said we need to have highly qualified teachers, right? Highly qualified. We even report how many are highly qualified, how many are not, right? And it's based on all of those background characteristics, right? But just because we have those things, we have experience, does not mean that we're going to see the gains in student achievement. The other 97% of what a teacher does, look at that. 97% that makes up that teacher as a person, that teacher's planning capability, that teacher's instructional delivery, okay, in the classroom. And we have teachers who can plan really great lessons, right? Who spend hours. My student teachers spend hours on a lesson plan, right? And it's like 10 pages, which is important. They need to do 10 pages right now. They need to think about everything that's going to happen. And then they implement it, and they think it's going to last 30 minutes, and it lasts 5 minutes. Right? And then they don't know what to do. Or they implement it, they think it's going to last 30 minutes and it ends up lasting all day, right? And so those things, the assessment, the data analysis, those are the things that we should focus on in terms of evaluating teachers, because those are the things that have the greatest impact on student achievement. Another area that we're not going to focus on as much, but I want to touch on for just a moment, because you did when you talked about what makes an effective teacher, is the teacher as a person. And what I'd like for you to think about is I'd like for you to think about a memorable teacher that you had. In fact, I'd like for you to think about in your K-12 experience the most memorable teacher that you had. Think about that for just a moment. Does everybody have that person's picture in their head? Everybody have that person's picture? All right, I'd like for you to jot down a phrase or a word that would describe that most memorable teacher. Jot down a phrase or a word that would describe that most memorable teacher. Okay, chat at your table. Tell us about that most memorable teacher. What do you remember about him or her? So, most memorable teacher. We were all able to think about that person. Person came to our head, and I'd like for you to raise your hand. I'm going to put some options up here as to which of these most closely aligns, kind of close to what you thought of, all right? How many of you said, well, you know, my teacher used cooperative learning. I'm a chatty Cathy, and I love to chit-chat, and I just love to get other people's ideas, and I remember this teacher used cooperative learning, and that's what I remember about him or her. Anybody say something like that, or used a strategy or something like that? No? Okay. How many of you said, my teacher gave great tests? I always knew what to expect on those tests. They were always aligned with what they were teaching in the classroom, gave great tests. Any of you remember that or had something like that? You might have remembered some bad ones, right? My teacher maintained control of the classroom. How many of you had something like that? Buddy, we all knew what to expect, and there was no playing around. All right? All right? How many of you said, you know, this teacher, I walked into the classroom and I saw that diploma on the wall from a great university, had a major in math, and I knew that it was going to be a good year, and it was. Anybody thought about that? No? Okay, very good. Yep. And in fact, when we do ask, we engaged in a study where we ask students how they view a quality teacher. Students in secondary will say, I want a teacher who knows what they're teaching. They'll say that, right? How many of you said something more like cared about me? How many of you said something more like made learning fun, exciting, interesting? Pushed me to succeed, had high expectations. Okay? A lot of these aspects we know are very important, right? But what we remember as students are those personal qualities that sometimes are a bit difficult to measure, right? You can walk into a classroom and get a feel for caring atmosphere.